Remember the first time your parents left you home alone? As the evening began, you felt like bursting into a Braveheart-style roar of freedom. But as the night went on, you started to freak out at every teeny-tiny sound the house made. This happened to a young girl called Anna, who was fortunate enough to have her dog for bedside company the first night her parents stayed out. She was awakened by a dripping sound in the night, so went to the kitchen to turn the tap off properly. A little weirded out, Anna got back under the covers and stuck her hand under the bed for a comforting lick from the dog. Sure enough, he licks her hand. The licking and heavy panting reassuringly lulls her back to sleep, although the dripping continued. When she wakes in the morning, Anna goes to her closet to find her poor dog hanging by the throat, his neck cut. On the wall, written in blood, are the words, "Humans can lick, too." Of course, that story is absolute bullshit. If you really want to frighten the hell out of people around the campfire this Halloween, you best get learning the totally true stories that follow. Fact is scarier than fiction, after all. We guarantee you will be crowned champion of scarers with this lot, our proof being the fact we've hid under our beds ever since writing this article, and we were not coming out till they were gone. 10. The body under your freaking bed. There's always that moment of dread when you stick one foot out from under your covers, as you envisage a Paranormal Activity-style death being dragged down the stairs. You have an instinctive worry with what's under your bed from a young age, even though nothing has ever been under there. If that is the case, you're one of the lucky ones. Dead bodies have popped up in hotel beds all over America, Florida, California, Las Vegas, Atlantic City, New Jersey. It seems there isn't a state that has gone without a corpse not checking out. One particularly disturbing case was in 2003, when a guest noticed a foul smell in his room at the Capri Motel, Kansas City, and complained to staff. After 3 nights of opening windows and no doubt gallons of Febreze, the stench would not leave, causing the poor guest to vomit in the room. When cleaning crew began shifting furniture to clean the puke, they found the decomposing corpse of a man, wearing only a nun's wimple and fishnet stockings. To repeat, he slept in that bed for 3 nights. Shudder. 9. The Dyatlov Pass Incident. Maybe it's best no one will ever know what happened with this case. The evidence is chilling enough. In 1959, a group of experienced Russian hikers went missing on a skiing trip. When their camp was discovered, their tents were found torn open from the inside, and they were wearing very little clothing. In Russia, in winter, it gets weirder. The bodies were stained orange with massive internal injuries from a force that the doctors studying the incident compared to that of a car crash. There were no signs of struggle, despite victims with fractured skulls, broken ribs, and one woman missing her tongue, eyes and other parts of her face. As you'd imagine, all sorts of theories to the cause of the deaths have been tried and tested over the years, but the final verdict was that the hikers died of a compelling natural force. What does that even mean? Never has something so ambiguous been so horrifying. 8. Calls from the dead. On September 12, 2008, 2 trains collided in the Chatsworth district of Los Angeles, killing 25 people in the crash. One of the passengers on board was Charles E. Peck, who was traveling from Salt Lake City for a job interview in Louisiana. His hopes were high on landing the job, as his fiancée, Andrea Katz, lived in California and he planned to marry her if he was hired. During the next 11 hours, Peck's mobile phone sent numerous calls to his fiancée, son, brother, stepmother and sister. Overall, his loved ones received a total of 35 calls. However, each time they answered they only heard static. When they called back, the calls went straight to voicemail. Their family could only be optimistic and assumed Charles was alive in the wreckage and calling for help. When the search team finally traced Peck's phone signal and discovered his body in a lead passenger car, where most major injuries and deaths occurred, they reported that Charles had died on impact, and that he couldn't have possibly made the calls. What's even stranger is that they never found the phone. 7. The strange case of Elisa Lam. A recent and pretty frightening mystery. In February 2013, a 21-year-old student named Elisa Lam was found floating in a water supply tank on the roof of the Cecil Hotel in Los Angeles. She had previously been reported missing. Her body was discovered by a maintenance worker after guests had complained that the water tasted funny, a grim thought indeed. However, there were no signs of visible trauma on the body and drug tests came back clear, ruling the death as accidental drowning. What makes this case so eerily disturbing is the surveillance tape police put online, possibly showing some of Lam's final moments. Is her behavior erratic that of a schizophrenic? She did have a history of bipolar disorder. Maybe someone outside the elevator? Then there is the fact access to the roof was barricaded completely, protected by an alarm. The water tank lids are so heavy to access that workers had to cut them open to remove her body. So how then, exactly, did Lam get in the tank and replace the lid behind her? You really have to see the video for yourself to understand why it has spooked the world and left some nagging questions. Bear in mind, no drugs or alcohol were found in her system. 6. Emails from the grave. Jack Frost died of a heart arrhythmia in June 2011 at the age of 32. Tragic, but nothing unusual about the story yet. In November the same year, Jack's friends each received an email from his account, signed with his name. His friends and family are adamant no one knew his passwords or could have hacked his account. How then did the messages contain such personal information that only Jack himself could have possibly known? One email implored his friend to clean his ******ing attic, which related to a private conversation the two had had shortly before his death. An email to his cousin read, "I knew you were gonna break your ankle," an injury that had occurred just a week before the email arrived. Probably a sick hacker, but Jack's relatives and friends said they still have no explanation for the messages, and have given up hope trying to find one. Spooky. 5. Welcome to the Funhouse. It sounds like a narrative from some kind of Goosebumps book, the ghost train of the fun fair inhabited by real dead people. That was, however, the precise case at New Pike Amusement Park in Long Beach, California, and they'd have gotten away with it too, if it hadn't been for those meddling kids at Universal Studios. In December 1976, a camera crew turned up to film an episode of the TV show $6 Million Man. While preparing the funhouse, a worker moved the hanging man, and his arm fell off, revealing human bone. Turns out, the corpse was that of outlaw Elmer McCurdy, who robbed a train of $46 and 2 jugs of whiskey in 1911. Before Universal Studios discovered the body of McCurdy, the man had been hanging around that funhouse for 4 years, fairgoers simply thinking he was a prop. 4. Buried alive. Your worst nightmare. But it has happened, quite a few times. Just last month, a Greek woman with cancer was buried alive by accident, waking up to find herself in a coffin, only to die before being rescued. Cemetery visitors heard banging and muffled shouting from inside the grave, an hour after her funeral. When they eventually dug her up, doctors said she had been dead for hours. By the way, this wasn't in medieval times, when healthcare was a sad state of affairs. This was September 2014. Some people are luckier. One astounding case happened in 1915, when a 30-year-old South Carolinian woman, Essie Dunbar, suffered a fatal epileptic attack. Well, everyone thought she did anyway. Her sister arrived late to the funeral, to see the last heaps of dirt being thrown onto the grave. She demanded to see her sister one last time and ordered the soil to be removed. When they opened the coffin lid, Essie raised up and smiled at the mourners around her, a sight that pretty much scared the living hell out of every person there. She went on to live for another 47 years. 3. Flesh-eating maggots and British woman's head. We reused to travel vaccinations before going on your jollies, to avoid nasties like yellow fever and typhoid. However, no one prepares you for flesh-eating maggots. When British woman Rochelle Harris went on holiday to Peru with her boyfriend last year, little did she know what she'd brought back with her. On the flight home she had excruciating headaches, pains in her face and scratching sounds in her head. When fluid began leaking from her ear, doctors thought it was a minor ear infection until they saw writhing massive maggots deep inside her ear. "Tell me no more," you cry. Well, it turns out a New World Army screwworm fly had laid eggs inside her head. The further Dr. S delved into her ear, the more the larvae retreated into her head, chewing a 12mm hole into her ear canal. All of the nups. 2. The Doodler. Now this is horror movie material. What makes this tragic unsolved mystery even more terrifying is the fact this guy is still out there if he hasn't died already. Only known as the Doodler, or the Black Doodler, this unidentified serial killer murdered 14 men in San Francisco between January 1974 and September 1975. We know what you're thinking. There is a ton of serial killers out there. What makes this one so creepy? His trademark behavior, before he killed, was to sketch his victims first, all gay men and drag queens that he picked up in bars and sex clubs. Unbeknown to the men, who thought they'd found a rather alluring artist, he then had sex with them before stabbing them to death. 3 of his surviving victims were unwilling to go public, which means he has never been caught. He is not the only serial killer that is still roaming the streets right now. Pedro Lopez, who slayed over 300 girls in Issei-Sagawa, who shot a student and ate her body, are both living normal lives outside of jail. That is us sleeping with one eye open from now on. 1. The German cannibal who ate a man's penis and then read Star Trek. If the title don't ruin your day, nothing will. Although, that is just the tip of the iceberg where this real-life horror story is concerned. In 2001, Armin Meiwes posted an advert online, looking for a well-built 18 to 30-year-old to be slaughtered and then consumed. Not quite a Match.com profile guaranteed to get you a date, as one equally deranged fellow responded. That man was Bernd Jürgen Armando Brand, who allowed mice to cut off his penis, which he then cooked, seasoned and attempted to share with the now bleeding to death Brand. Apparently raw penis was too chewy, so they fried it with salt, pepper, wine, garlic, and some of Brand's fat. The entire freak show was filmed, and court officials who saw it say that Meiwes then read a Star Trek book for hours while Brand lay bleeding in the bath. He kissed Brand before stabbing him to death in the throat, hanging the body on a meat hook and tearing chunks of flesh from it. He then consumed the body over the next 10 months, grinding bones to use as flour. Apparently Meiwes is sorry for his crimes and has become a vegetarian in jail, but he does believe there are about 800 cannibals living in Germany. Remind us to avoid that country in the future. So there you go, 10 absolutely horrifying true tales you can tell around the campfire this Halloween. Know any more scary stories that aren't just urban myths? Share them with us in the comments below.